Good morning, kids, and welcome to Primary Church. Happy Easter, and hopefully you are having hopefully you're not going too insane with quarantine here, but it is to keep you safe. But I'm excited to be able to tell you today's story, and wish I could see your faces, but until we are able to get together physically, we'll have to do it this way. Our songs, I've done them I haven't added songs before, but I did this time. Hopefully you'll enjoy them.
God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. God loves me so. God loves me so. God loves me so. He's so good to me. God answers prayer. God answers prayer. God answers prayer. He's so good to me. God is so good to me. God is so good. God is so good to me. So good to me. God is so good to me. So good to me. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, say amen. Amen. If you're happy and you know it, say amen. Amen. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, say amen. Amen. If you're happy and you know it, do all three. Amen. If you're happy and you know it, do all three. Amen. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, do all three. Amen. If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, do all three. Amen.
Our verse for our Bible story today is Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. The Bible tells us about one woman in particular that went to see Jesus' tomb after he had passed away, and that was Mary Magdalene. Mary loved Jesus with all her heart, and she went to the tomb very, very early, so early it was still dark outside. When Mary got to the tomb and she saw the stone was rolled away, she was so disappointed. She wanted to see Jesus. He was precious to her. She was so distraught, she turned around and ran to look for Peter and John. When she found them, she said, "They've taken Jesus. They've taken him away." Peter and John immediately took off running for the tomb. Once they arrived at the tomb, they saw that it was empty. They saw the burial clothes lying there, and Jesus was gone. They were amazed. He had risen just like he said he would. Peter and John had gone home, but Mary Magdalene, she wanted to stay at the tomb. She missed Jesus so much. Her heart was full of sadness. She just couldn't leave. Mary stooped down and she looked into the door of the tomb, and she saw two angels. They were sitting where the body of Jesus had been. They said, "Mary, why are you crying?" She said, "They've taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they've moved him." Mary turned back to where she had been standing outside the tomb, and she saw a man, but she didn't know who he was. The man gently asked Mary, "Why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" Mary thought, "This must be the gardener." She said, "If you have taken my Lord somewhere, will you tell me? I need to know where you have moved him. Please tell me where you have placed him." The man spoke to her and called her by name. "Mary?" All of a sudden, Mary realized who this was. She said, "Master." Jesus said, "I am going to heaven to be with my Father." He said, "But you go and tell the disciples that you have seen me." And Mary believed Jesus, and she did exactly what he had told her. She went and told the disciples. She said, "I've seen Jesus. I've seen the risen Lord." What a great day for Mary. She immediately left and ran to tell the disciples the good news. One of the disciples that she ran into was Peter. She began to share her story. Peter was likely more sad about the crucifixion than any of the other disciples. Every time he thought about it, he was reminded of how he had denied Christ 3 times. He remembered the trial and how he was warming his hands by the fire with the enemy. And they had said, "Aren't you with Jesus? I thought I saw you with him." Peter said, "I don't know that man." And he remembered the cock crowing. And Jesus turning to look at him. And Peter realizing he was so ashamed that he had denied Christ. How could I have done that? Peter was thinking. But Jesus still loved Peter, and he wanted Peter to know that he would never forsake him, even if Peter disappointed him. Jesus chose a special time and place to meet with Peter all by himself. Peter must have felt so relieved that Jesus, to be able to speak with Jesus, and that he wanted to speak with him. Maybe Peter just told Jesus how sorry he was for denying him and how wrong he was. What an exciting day for Peter. He had seen the risen Lord. On the way to meet up with a couple of other disciples, Jesus ran into a couple of people on the road to Emmaus. Everybody had been talking about Jesus' crucifixion and the 2 thieves and everything that had happened. How they had said he would rise from the grave. The 3 came to the village of Emmaus. Jesus said, "Well, I better be going now." They said, No, come on, stay with us. It's almost evening. You can eat with us." Jesus did stay and eat. He thanked God for the food as he broke the bread and shared it with the other gentlemen and their families. They knew who he was. Why, it's Jesus. And immediately, Jesus vanished out of their sight. The two men rose from the table and went straight back to Jerusalem where the disciples were. The disciples were in their home with the doors shut tightly because they were afraid. They knew the Jewish leaders hated them and would try to have them killed if they found them. There the disciples sat together, hiding, wondering what they would do next. They had followed Jesus for 3 years. They had believed what he told them, and now he was gone. What would happen to them? These two men told the disciples that they had seen Jesus. They said, yes, we broke bread with him. And that's when we knew immediately it was Jesus himself. Peter also saw him. And immediately in the midst, there was Jesus, standing in the middle of all of them. Peace be unto you, he said. So Jesus immediately held out his hands so they could see the nail prints. That day was also a glad day for the disciples. They had seen the risen Lord. One of the disciples wasn't there when Jesus came to them. But when Thomas came back, they said, Thomas, you won't believe what happened. We saw Jesus. I don't believe it, Thomas answered. And I won't believe it until I see the nail prints in his hand and the place where they pierced him with the sword. He said, unless I put my own 2 fingers in those nail prints, I won't believe it. And thrust my hand into the wound on his side. I have to see it for myself. Poor Thomas. He hadn't been there with the disciples, and he hadn't seen Jesus, and he didn't believe. 8 days later, Jesus appeared to the disciples again, and this time Thomas was there. He had heard what Thomas had said about him not believing. He knew what he was thinking because Jesus knows our heart. He turned and looked deeply into Thomas's eyes. Thomas must have felt like Jesus could see right through him. Jesus spoke just to Thomas. Reach out your finger and put it in the nail prints in my hands. Reach out your hand, Thomas, and put it into the wound in my side. Believe, Thomas. Believe. That moment, Thomas's heart changed. He believed Jesus. He didn't touch the nail prints in Jesus' hands anymore. He didn't need to. He believed. He really believed. Thomas bowed his heart before Jesus and he said softly, "My Lord and my God." That was also another glad day for Thomas. He had seen the risen Lord. Jesus again spoke to Thomas. "Thomas, because you've seen me, you have believed. But Thomas, I will tell you who the really happy people are. The really happy people are the ones who believe without seeing me. The really happy people are the ones who simply believe my words."